First thing you're going to want to do is locate the project file. To do this, head to where you installed Rapid2D. Then head into the projects folder, and then drop the coin. Here you'll be able to find an item called exportedprojects.sln. Simply double click this and it will open up in Visual Studio. Now when you do open this up, you may get the same on-screen error. Just click Restart this application. Then eventually Visual Studio will open up and you'll be greeted with a screen that looks like this. Double click on Windows 8 Desktop and then head into the scripts folder and scroll down until you see usermain.h. Now, within the ref class usermain sealed, we need to create a new access group. This is called internal, and it's where we will store the internal variables that the text objects will call and draw to the screen later on. So the three variables that we need to create is an integer to hold the score, an integer to hold the amount of coins left, and an integer to hold the high score. Now that we've created our internal access group and its variables, it's time to move on to the variables we'll be placing within the private access group. The first two variables we will create are going to be our touchpoint variables. So go ahead and create a float for touchpoint x and then create another one for the touchpoint y. These variables will be used to detect where the player has touched. Next up, we will create two booleans, one to check if the coin has reached the score zone, and one to check if the coin has been dropped. Now that we have created our variables, it's time we initialize them in the usermain.cpp. To do this, head back into the scripts folder and locate usermain.cpp. Then navigate it until you reach the function called usermain.start. Here we will want to initialize our variables. First, we'll start off with the internal variables. So set score to 0, coin total to 5, and high score to 0. Now we'll want to initialize our private variables. So set touchpoint x to 0.0f, touchpoint y to 0.0f, scored to false, and coin drop to false. Now that we have created and initialized our variables, it's time to set the touch points. To do this, scroll down the usermain.cpp file until you locate the function called pointerPressed. Now what you're going to want to do is say touchpoint x equals underscore touchpoint, and then use the dereference operator and go down to the x, or just simply type x, and then end it with a semicolon. Now repeat this for touchpoint y. Now move into pointer moved, you will want to repeat the code. Then we'll move into pointer pressed and repeat the code again. What this is doing is it's setting the touch point to wherever the pointer has been pressed. If it detects that the pointer has been moved, it sets the touch point to its new touch point. And then, when the pointer is released, we are making sure that the touch point doesn't change. Okay, now that our touch point is setting to the place where the player touches the screen, we can now place the player. To do this, we need to stay in usermain.cpp and scroll up back to the pointerPressed function. Here we're going to want to create a pointer. This pointer will need to point to the player object. So using the caret symbol, which is also known as the hi-hat, type player and then end it with the hi-hat, and then type player in lowercase. Now we're going to want to do something called typecasting. We do this by setting player equal to open bracket, player with the caret symbol, close bracket, get, which is a user main function, then open up another set of brackets and enter the string player, not forgetting that you need to use speech marks, and then close off the parentheses and then end it with a semicolon. Now that we've done that, we can now use the pointer to check if the new pointer, player, is a null pointer. So do if player does not equal null pointer. Now, within that if statement, we want to nest another one which checks if the coin hasn't been dropped and the coin total is greater than 0. Then, within that if statement, you're going to want to nest yet another. This if statement will check if touchpoint x is less than 9. Then, within that if statement, you're going to want to nest yet another. If touchpoint x is greater than minus 9.4 and is less than 9.4. Now, using our player pointer, we can use the dereference operator to get access to the setPosition function. This function takes two parameters, the first an x position and the second a y position. So for this we will want to enter the x position as touchpoint x, and then for the y position you will want to enter touchpoint y. Then again, using our player pointer and the dereference operator, you'll need to access the setRotation function. This has one parameter which we will enter as 0. This will stop the player object from rotating when it is created, just in case it has adopted any rotation whilst it's been outside of the screen. Then we need to decrement the coin total. After that, we need to set coin drop to true. This will stop the player from being able to place the coin multiple times. Okay, so now we can move on to creating the score zone. To do this, yet again create a pointer to the player object. Then within an if statement, check the player's position, more specifically the player's y position, which we will check to see if it is less than 9. Then nest an if statement inside of that one to check if the player's x position is greater than minus 9.46 and the player's x position is less than minus 8.54. If it is, we will then need to set coin drop to false, then we need to plus 50 to the score, and then using m_load file, then the dereference pointer, and then load scene. This function takes one parameter, a string parameter, but before we enter the string parameter we need to use the keyword L. This means literal. Then open up the speech marks and type in first scene, then close the speech marks and the parentheses, and then end it with a semicolon. What this code will do is reload the game world as it is, however it will maintain all of the variables that we have set. So our coin total at this point will be 4, 3, 2 or 1 or even 0, and then whatever our score is it will maintain that as well. Now the way I got those two values that we are checking against, minus 9.46 and minus 8.54, is in the editor. What you do is you simply grab the player object and drag it to the peg on the left. Then look at its transform coordinates. Write these down, but mainly you will want to check the x position, so just write down the x. Then move the player object to the peg on its right, all the way up until it just about touches, and then jot down the x position again. These two x positions will be what you will use to check if it is in with that score zone. You will want to continue using else if statements to produce the score zones, retrieving the coordinates the same way I explained previously. Okay, so now that we have the score zone created, we should move on to creating the reset button. To do this, within the update method, but outside of the nested if statements that we created for the score zone, you will want to create a pointer to the reset button, which is done exactly the same way as we created the player pointer, except where we used player, we will use reset. For now, that is all we'll do in user main for the reset button, as we need to actually head into the reset buttons.h and .cpp files in order to create a new variable. The first thing that we are going to want to do is head into the reset.h file, and then head within the internal access group. We need to create a boolean called reset game. Now the reason we put this in internal is the same reason we put the three variables from the beginning in internal, because another game object will be accessing this variable. So go ahead and create a boolean called reset game. Now that we have created the variable, we need to initialize it. So head on over to reset.cpp and head to the onStart function. Here you want to set reset game to false. Then you will need to traverse through the reset.cpp until you find the onClicked method. In this, we will want to set the reset game to true. Okay, so now that we've created all of the necessary variables, we should head back into usermain.cpp, and below where you recently created the pointer to the reset button, you need to create an if statement. This if statement will check if the reset button does not equal a null pointer, and if the reset dereference operator and then reset game equals true, then inside of curly braces we need to reload the scene. We do this by using m_load file, then the dereference operator, load scene, and then open up the parentheses, use the keyword L, and then put the string of text first scene, and then close off the parentheses. Now within that if statement we need to nest another one. This if statement will check to see if our score variable is greater than the high score variable, and that the coin total equals 0. The reason we do this is because first, we don't want this score variable to overwrite the high score variable if it's not greater than the high score variable. And we only want it to do this when the coin total is equal to 0. So within that if statement, you need to set high score to the score variable. Now all that's left to do is reset the variables that we want to set back to their defaults when the reset button is pressed. So if you remember, when we first initialized our variables, we set score to 0, coin drop to false, and coin total to 5. The reason we do this is because when we reset the scene out when it reaches a score zone, is it maintains the score and the amount of coins that the player had at the time. This way, we are completely resetting the game back to its default state. Now we are going to create the text objects. Now we are going to separate this into two separate sections. The first section is where we will cover how to draw variables to the screen. In this case, our internal variables located in user main. And then in the next section, we'll just show you how to set up a text object on its own. Okay, so to start with, head over to the coins.cpp file. Here, within the onStart method, you are going to want to create a pointer to user main. Now doing this is slightly different to how we created the pointer to the player and the reset button object. But just like before, start off by typing user main with the hi-hat symbol, and then you give it the nickname of UM. Now we need to set this equal to open bracket user main with the hi-hat symbol, and then close bracket. This is where it changes. Instead of writing get, we need to write user main double colon get instance, and then open and close the parentheses and end the line. What this basically does is it allows us to get an instance from user main. In this case, we'll be using it to get our coin total. Now on a couple of lines below that, you will want to create a new pointer, this time to Rapid2D color, and then give it the nickname _color, and then set it equal to ref new Rapid2D color. Now what we will do with this new pointer is we will use it and then follow it up with the dereference operator, and then select one of the 4 available options, which are R, G, B and A, which stand for red, green, blue and alpha. Now these are float variables, however they go between 0 and 1. So in this case we're going to want to set everything to 1. So put color followed by the dereference operator and then R equals 1. Now repeat this for all of the others. After setting up the channels, you will need to move on to setting the font color, the font name, the text and the font size. But before we can do this, we need to use the keyword this. This quite literally means point to this object. So what we will do is we'll use the keyword this followed up by the dereference operator, and then access the set font color method. Here we will want to set the font color to the pointer we created earlier, _color. Next, we will move on to setting the font name. Yet again, use the keyword this, followed by the dereference operator, and then use set font name method. Then, this function takes a string. By default, the only font included in any created project is vera.ttf. So fill in the string with vera.ttf. Next, we will set the text. This is where we will actually use our user main pointer. So just like before, use the keyword this and then set text. Now what you do in this is you open up the parentheses and then enter a string. So enter the string coins with a colon at the end. Then put a space and close the speech marks. Now before you close the parentheses, use the plus operator and then use followed by the dereference operator and then our coin total variable, and then close the parentheses. What this does is it draws the text and then it also draws our variable for us. All that's left to do now is set the font size. Yet again, use the this keyword followed by the dereference operator and then use set font size. This simply takes an integer, so just simply enter 32. There is only one more thing we need to do in coins.cpp, and that is scroll down to the onUpdate method. The reason we need to write some code here is because the only time it will draw the text to the screen is when the onStart function is called, and that is only when the game begins. So we use the onUpdate method in order to continually draw the score to the screen. So when the score changes, the score drawn on the screen changes as well. So just like before, create a pointer to user main, then use the keyword this followed up by the dereference operator and then set text. And just like before, give it the string coins, but before you close the parentheses down, make sure that you use the plus operator with followed by the dereference operator and then our coin total variable. You will now want to repeat this process for the other two scripts that we have, which are score and high score. Now let's move on to just drawing a simple text object to the screen. This time we will not need a pointer to user main. All we simply need to do is head into the score zone scripts. In this case we'll start with points50. So double click on points50.cpp and go to its onStart function. Here, just like before, you will want to start by creating a rapid 2D color pointer and calling it _color. You'll then want to set that pointer to equal ref new rapid 2D color. Just like before, use the _color followed by the dereference operator and set R to 1. Then do the same for green, then blue, and then alpha. Then we need to use the this keyword followed by the dereference operator and then access the set font color method and pass it the parameter of our pointer _color. Then we want to use the this keyword followed by the dereference operator once more and then use set font name and set it to vera.ttf. Then again use the this keyword in the dereference operator and follow it with set text. And now, since we are in points50, we will want to set this string to 50. Then, last but not least, all we need to do is use this with the dereference operator one last time and then set font size and set it to 32. And now that should have drawn 50 to the screen in our two 50 score zones. You will want to repeat this for points 100, points 200, point 0 and points 500. So as you can see, it currently says remote machine. This needs to be changed. The way we change this is to head over to desktop ARM and click on it, and then select x64 if you have a 64-bit operating system, or x86 if you have a 32-bit. So we're going to choose x64 and you'll notice that remote device has changed to local machine. Simply click on this and eventually it will load you into a screen that looks like this. Now all we can do is we can click anywhere on the screen. You'll notice it's not placing the coin until we click somewhere across here. And there we have it. As you can see, we have a coin that's dropping down. It's going to land in the 200 score zone. Our score updates. We can press the reset button, which hasn't set the high score because we stopped that from happening until the coins equal 0.